You're listening to Eat, Play, Sex with Dr. Cat, the place to up-level that sexy life of yours, with expert talk on sex, love, and nutrition.
A lot of people using it still.
Yeah.
How do you discover this about yourself? So say, I guess, can anybody be a dominant, or is this something that you discover about yourself, or how do you come into that?
Well, it's interesting because I felt like, and though I couldn't really obviously see people in that class, I definitely got the impression that there was a lot of submissives and switches in the class. And, I meant to tell this joke that there's this book by Claudia Varin, I think it's called on being dominant or something like that. And she has a quiz in there, like, take this quiz to find out if you're a dominant, a switch, or a submissive. And so I go to take the quiz and I'm like, I'm going to see what the answers are in the back. Like, what is this? Like, where are we getting to? And then the answers in the back are, if you didn't answer any of the questions, you're a dominant. If you answered about half and got into the back and you filled out all of them, you're a submissive, because it was like you listened to orders rather than just, taking them. And it was so funny because like during the class, like I said something like, hey, if you can see my presentation, raise your hand. I can't see anyone. And then later I looked in the chat and like a bunch of people were like, raise his hand. And I'm like, guys, I can't see you, so I just thought it was really funny. I'm like, submissive. And later I was talking to my partner. I was like, did you get the impression that there was a lot of like subs in the class? And she's like, yeah, I did. So I kind of, I think that for some people it comes very naturally. Like for me, like it was very much just always a part of who I was and just felt very natural. And for other people where I'm trying to help them tap into it, particularly I think people identify as female or non-binary, like we're not taught to be aggressive or assertive, and like those kinds of behaviors are really looked down upon. So, if a woman is doing something that's very forward or just acting a certain way, that's it's demoralizing, it's like derogatory. But like if a man is doing the same thing, like it's applauded. So it's like there weren't that many male doms in the class because this is how they go about their day. There were a few, but it wasn't the same. It was, it was different. So I think it's just I was just trying to think through to try to have people try to tap into that part of themselves that like wants to be dominant, but maybe has never given themselves permission to be dominant. So
That's a really good point. And this concept of permission to tap into that part of you, where we have so many messages about who we're supposed to be, or what's okay, what's right, what's wrong, what's not okay. I have male clients and friends who reveal to me, they're like, I can't dominate her because I'm afraid that she'll perceive me as a predator, or that I'm going to harm the feminine, or that kind of thing. And what would you say to somebody who finds those mental blocks that prevent them from being able to step into that?
Well, first of all, I would say that, hey, everyone has them and it's good to acknowledge them. But again, BDSM is the consensual negotiation of things that you shouldn't do in the outside real world, but that you can do in like BDSM land. I always say like, well, I hope you've always been told to like not hit people and call them names. But if you are negotiating that and it is consensual between all the adults that this is happening with, then it is okay to do that. And it's like, you're unlearning, you're not like unlearning a behavior per se, but you're giving yourself permission to understand that if someone is consenting to something, then it is okay. And there's a lot of sex shaming and there's a lot of kink shaming, and we need to try to work through that, all of us together, because everyone's having like the same problem.
Yeah. So God, I just think, as you're describing that, how liberating that could be when you fully give yourself permission to express something that may be primal or natural, or this, desire to play something out. And it's always been a no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think that like we live in a society that like, even that a lot of it is very sexualized. We don't put a lot of emphasis on pleasure. And only recently has there been a lot of like stuff in the mainstream about self-care and like what that looks like, and how to treat ourselves well, but like not, we're barely doing things like the minimum to keep ourselves healthy. And a lot of that has to do with like our society and like the way that we're governed, but like there's not a lot like based on pleasure and giving ourselves permission to have that pleasure. Because it starts with like masturbation is often seen as like dirty or unclean and not okay. So it's like we're often not in a place where we're able to understand our own needs and desires and pleasure. And if we don't understand them for ourselves, it's really hard to convey that to somebody else.
Preach. Everyone, back that up, rewind, listen to that again, because that's really such an empowering statement. And it's like that question of what do you want can be so short circuiting because we don't give ourselves permission to go there. And then we are holding the responsibility of actually learning what is it that you want, which can be a lot.
It's the first question. I coach a lot of people and tell them what to do. And I'm like, look, it's really easy. What do you want? And then like, you just go do that. And people are like, oh, it's like really hard. I'm like, well, it's not really. Like, it doesn't matter. Outside of even just like the sexual or kinky realm, it's like when I coach people on like business stuff, I'm like, okay, what do you want to happen with your business? What are the numbers? What direction do you want to go in? And if you don't know, well, then your business will never be successful. You're never going to get there because you don't know what you want. And, this is like the first question we have to ask ourselves. And, this is why I refer people back to kink for like the kink negotiation worksheet, because it goes through a lot of list of like more like the feelings rather than lists of activities like that go into yes, maybe, no, because we've all seen them. And like Pleasure Trust has one, like a card that you fill out and stuff like that. But this one is more about what do you want to feel? What do you not want to feel? What is like, what kind of play feels good to you? It's more about like your feelings about what you want and you desire rather than just like checking off some boxes.
Well, that's powerful because it's bringing in a sort of embodiment into that question versus just what do you want, which can be like, I don't know, overwhelmed, right? But you're like, how do you want to feel? Which brings us into the body and allows us to visualize what that could look like or be like.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because like when I see clients, like sometimes like they don't know, they just know they want to be dominated. And I'll ask them, okay, well, what made you contact me? Like, what porn are you watching? Like, what scenes get you hot? Because there must have been something, and then sometimes I'll go through something with people. I call it like an omakase BDSM, where I'm like, okay, we're just going to try a bunch of different things. And like, if you like this direction, we'll go in this direction. If you don't like it, we'll stop. Or, and then if I'm feeling like particularly sassy and they want me to dominate them and they're like, well, I don't know what I want. And I say, okay, well, let's do financial domination. You give me $10,000 and leave. And they're like, oh, I don't want that. I'm like, okay, so I guess what you want then. Like, what do you want? Like, because that's what I want, so looking for some takers on that one.
Oh, that's amazing. What is financial domination for anybody who's like ears perked up like, huh?
Yeah. So financial domination is, it's so weird to me to define because it's like at like just glancing at it, and certainly through a lot of like cheesy articles on Bustle, it just seems like you put up your Cash App and like then give you like hundreds and thousands of dollars. Well, yeah, like it is, but it's not, because you're like talking them into this money, and it's a lot of work. Like if you think you can do it, go try. Like talk me into giving you $100 right now. But it's sort of like it can be things like, yes, just like straight up money. People will do different kind of draining games. So it's like, maybe they'll give them like $10 a minute or $10 or retweet or something like that. Or, a lot of gifts, or just like, oh, I want to just give you this money. But it's like, it's a lot of work. Like, I have certain, or just like gifts, or people like adopting bills for you, stuff like that. So it's sort of turned into like its own thing within like the BDSM realm. So obviously mostly with people who are doing it for a living, it's not really a hobby, as opposed to like, oh, I really love foot fetish, I love people worshiping my feet. Like that's not like, that could be professional or lifestyle, but like financial domination is like generally that is your job now. So yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Lovers, thank you again for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, hit subscribe and head over to eatplaysex.com to connect with me and grab my sexy guides. Because my goal here is to get you to eat, play, and sex better, so you can improve your sex life, which will improve every aspect of your life. Until next time, keep it sexy.